Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. My to-do list, every time I knock a few things off of it, I seem to be adding at least that many, if not more. So the to-do list is getting bigger instead of smaller. These are outstanding, so this can be knocked out quite quickly. Sedera japonica, or Phalaenopsis japonica, having checked my records, it's been in the pot far too long. But it has got some quite good roots, one of which is attached to the tag. See if I can break that free. I don't think so. Come on, let go. Gotcha. Right, let's see what we got in here. There's no decision on what this is going to get potted in yet until I see what's going on. I think there's a couple actually. Oh no. And basically no roots in the bottom of the pot. Right, that tells me the pot's too deep. If it's not using that media, all it's going to do is stay wet. Now that's got more roots and better roots than I was expecting. I don't quite know what I was expecting on this. But it excuse me, it needs to go deeper in its pot. That's apart from the media being nearly 2 years old. My fault, didn't check the records. That's not bad. I mean, obviously there's some totally gone roots that can come off if they don't fall off on their own, but not too many. It's the centre of the plant that tends to be gone, and the ones around the outside are quite good. Yeah, so what bark hangs on to there I will try and tease off under the tap, because obviously it is old bark. Oh, hello fluffy cat. You fusspot, aren't you? I think he's becoming starstruck just because he's been in the odd video or two. He seems to be hanging around when I'm filming lately. I think he wants his own YouTube channel. Yes, so that's just a matter of cleaning off, a quick trim, and then trying to sink it farther down in the pot. And these roots are not huge, fleshy things like they are on a lot of the Phalaenopsis. And as a consequence, that's going to go in medium bark. I didn't want to make that decision until I saw the size, shape of the roots. But that can go in medium bark in a much shallower root run. And that way it should use up the water in the pot. And the bottom of that pot is soaking wet. Right, so that's that one. Clean up with that one. What else we got? This Phalaenopsis, this is just a, it says pale yellow with pink spots and a magenta centre. That one hasn't long bloomed. That bloomed in the house during the winter. There's the old spikes there. I trimmed it in case it decided it wanted to branch. And it hasn't died back, but then it hasn't branched yet either. Can't remember how long ago those blooms finished. But it was before it went back in the grow room. This one's going on a mount, and I've just discovered down in the shed I'm running out of wood. So I'm going to have to go on a wood hunt. I'm going to have to go and find a forest with some fallen oak trees and try and get a bit more. Not a brilliant root system here, that's for sure. Some totally gone. Again, always in the centre of the plant, and the roots in the centre of the plant are at the base of the rhizome, so they are the oldest ones. That makes sense. The rest of them aren't too bad. There's more than enough to get a hold on a mount, and this is why I've chosen to do it now, is it does have two nice strong new roots coming out. So if they can actually find their way to the mount, possibly with a bit of encouragement, and get those to attach, and then some of the others are showing signs of branching. So if I get some branches on the existing roots, having trimmed the old ones off, and the new ones can find the mount and attach, that will get going. But it's in growth mode at the moment, new leaf coming, and two new roots, so that can be mounted when it's been cleaned up. That's that one. And this funny little thing, I've just had to go and look this up. This is Sarcochilus hartmannii, and I was told that by one of the viewers who had seen this for sale recently at Burnham's. I mean, I was given it by Arthur at Burnham's. But the fact that it has signs of new root growth, if it's going to get repotted, now's a good time. Now this, believe it or not, is a vandaceous type of orchid, and is mainly, it's Australian, it's mainly found as a lithophyte, not an epiphyte, although it does grow as an epiphyte sometimes. So it can do either. Temperature tolerant, so not fussed, not too cold I would imagine, but not too fussed. And being a vandaceous sort, I would imagine sticking it in a seems to be peat might not be the best of ideas. But there's some good roots here. There's a couple that have gone, but very few. And I've got new roots growing at this point. See, that could be mounted. But there was somebody at the Wessex Orchid Society had a pot full, a large round clay pot. I suspect there was probably at least half a dozen plants planted up in there to get that size. But nonetheless, I may be not giving them credit where credit's due. They could have grown that from something like this once upon a time. But this does have a habit of producing new plants from the base. So although it's vandaceous, it doesn't grow too tall. Not a big plant. Lovely flowers, arching flowers that hang down. I am thinking, should this go on a mount? Should I mount it? If it grows on rocks and things, it doesn't need a lot of stuff around its roots. And if it's not very often found as an epiphyte, it might be a good idea. If it's temperature tolerant and it grows on rocks, chances are perhaps that would be better on a mount. Trouble is, I'm not sure I've got a suitable mount, so I'll have to have a look. Decision not made. But nice little root system, a couple of new ones pushing on nicely, and yet another new one coming out at the base. Since I got this, it had one really tatty leaf that I sliced, and it's lost one. But it is currently producing, it's just produced that leaf in the winter, and it's now starting a new one. So it's in growth mode. It's a good time to, get it sorted out. So we'll give that a bit of a clean up and then have a think. Do I want that mounted, or do I just want it in a small pot with large bark? Still thinking on that. I'll be back. Okay, slight disaster. The mount I was going to use, the piece of wood, when I tried to make a hole in it, it's just rotten. So that is of no use at all. So what I've done is I've gone and started a new big piece of cork. Obviously you can cut these to whatever size you like, but this is firm, good stuff. So that will last, well, I won't say forever, but cork bark does eventually rot, but it takes an awful long time. So that's a nice little mount for a Phalaenopsis. So it's just had boiling water poured all over it, but it is cooled down now. Right, first job then, let's get rid of some roots. Not too many. Now, let's make sure I'm on camera here because I'm talking. That's a damaged area there and a dead end. So if I take that back just behind that damage, that should branch. That's the theory. Phalaenopsis roots branch. But what I don't want is any dead ones. So they're coming off at the base. There aren't too many. Not too many at all. You'll have to keep your eye on me as well because I've got multiple plants to deal with. Just remember to sterilise the scissors in between each one. I've a habit of forgetting. So that one got a lot of damage because it had a lot of bark attached to it, and because it's going on a mount I don't want bark left on it, so I'm going to take that one back to the last kink. Those two are welded together so they'll have to stay. We'll take both of them off, which I don't want to do. It's showing signs of growing at the end of that root, so we'll keep that one. You can come off. That's probably about it. What's left is pretty good. But what I don't need is that base of the rhizome with no roots on. It serves no purpose, so we'll snip that off. We'll have a good look at the rhizome while we're at it. That's good. Every chance I get. Yeah, everything else seems okay. There's a little damage to the end of... Is that one worth keeping? No. It was a failed root that then branched and now has a failed end, so it serves no purpose. So we'll have that one off. Back there. That'll do. So although these roots have discoloured here, they're not gone. These are all now good firm roots. So that should form enough. So let's get the thing up the right way when we mount it as well. Now this has obviously got to go quite flat on its mount and be pulled in so that yeah, I think that will be okay like that. And then you can have some moss round it, and some of the roots can be persuaded to point towards the mount so that if they do branch or extend. But there's certainly more than enough roots here to strap against the mount. So that's good. That'll do as is, like that. And I know I'm going to get told off for not putting my tie on first, but I want that plant sat where it is now. I don't want it to move. So we'll do it the other way this time. I'm just going to put a loop round to hold the plant in place, then I'll add some moss, and it's going to have to go round quite a few times, so I'm going to get a fair old length here. More is better than running out. Simples. Nothing more annoying than needing one more turn to complete the job and you haven't got enough. That's a real grr. Right, there we are. I'm just going to go round below that lower leaf and anchor those roots in place. I won't pull this ridiculously tight because it's got no cushioning, it's got no moss, so it's right bare against the roots, and it will cut in if you pull too hard. You just need it there to hold the plant in place while I get some moss on. That'll do. And I don't need tons and tons of moss, just need enough. What I tend to do with mounted orchids is I tend to get a lot of the moss near the base of the plant, because that's where the new roots will push out, and they're the sort of tender young roots that it would be better if they didn't dry out. So I tend to go, you know, those that are sticking out the sides of the plant that have extended, you know, they can be aerial, but just enough moss around the base that when it's watered it'll stay wet long enough to hydrate new roots, the delicate ones. Will probably do. One of the new roots is straight into the moss because it's coming out in that direction, whereas this one will head off out into the air. Excuse me. Right, so where do we need to go now then? I want that root against the mount, so I'm going to have a loop round over that just to hold it against it. That way it should bind on, and the same with this one. No, if I do that one it'll break, so we'll leave that one. We'll come round there, and we need to start again from the other side, this time over the top of the plant, underneath leaves, not over the top. If you can totally avoid it, stick to the roots. If you're tying, don't tie leaves in. They'll only end up cutting. And then I think I'll go round again for those roots higher up. Again, under the leaf and over the top of those. Those are not going to bend much, that little group there. They're going to stay as they are, but I still need the plant firm. So before I tie, check the plant. Yep, totally stationary, not moving at all. Perfect. Ugh. You've got wet hands. Not ideal when you're trying to tie fishing line, especially when the bit you've got is a bit long. But like I said, it's better to have too much than too little. But wet hands is not ideal with fishing line, because the fishing line sticks to your hands and doesn't stay loose. So it's right, that's that. Have I got a tag for that one? Yes. Right, we'll just make a hole in that, making use of our rotten wood, so I don't make a hole in the worktop. Oh dear, that's never happened before. I didn't realise they were that brittle. Let's try doing it more gently this time. And then just trim that snapped end, make it look a bit prettier. There we go. And we'll just strap that in place. So that's all this is for really. This has no name, it's just a hybrid, but it tells me what colour it is so that I can identify it in my notes. You know, there are quite a few no ID hybrids that are mounted. Well, if I do anything to any of them and I want to update my notes, I need to know which one's which. And that's all it's for. That's all the tag is for. It just says Phalaenopsis hybrid, but it does give me a description of the bloom, which then differentiates it. Mind you, it does have to bloom first, but this one hasn't long bloomed, so it is. This was one of the ones I was waiting for quite a while to get bloomed, so that I could identify it specifically. So let me tuck that in there, stop it waggling around a bit. You're not going to behave, are you? Well, you are, you just don't know it yet. There we go. Okay, that's that one done. That's nice and firm. Latest leaf pointing upwards. Leaves are slightly pointing downwards, but these have got enough, these will turn slightly as they acclimatise to the light coming in, and then this one will grow, you know, a natural look to it. That one's not long for this world, that one's going to come off soon, but I don't like pulling them off. I'd rather wait. I'd rather let them fall off naturally. That's just me. I know some people like to cut them or pull them or do whatever. They'll come off in their own good time when they're ready. Right, that's that one done. Let's get that one out of the way. And the next one I'm going to do is the Sedera japonica. Before we start hacking that, I need to do the scissors again, because this one has got rotten roots in places. The other one did have slightly rotting roots in places, so if there's any nasties in amongst the roots and you don't sterilise your scissors in between, you just pass it on. It's just better to be safe. And as I've recently found out, it's not the soaking in the alcohol that does the cleaning and the sterilising, it's the rapid evaporation, so they just need to stay in the air for a bit. And while they're doing that, I'll go and see if I can find a suitable pot for this. This is going to get jammed in the smallest pot I can get it in. Right, where was I? I can't find a shallow pot, but as opposed to its previous pot, which was flat bottomed, this one is an air cone pot. I need air around the base of this because the roots didn't get down into the bottom of the pot and it kept staying soggy. And the consequences are, where's the rot on the roots? The lower bits, the bits that were in the soggy bark. Yeah, so I want to keep this in a shallow root run this time. But first job is to get rid of all the rubbish. There is a fair bit as well. And when I've finished doing this, it's going to have a flatter root system. Because, like I said, a lot of the rotten roots are the ones hanging down in the soggy media. Now, a lot of people say that a lot of the Phalaenopsis species do like to stay moister than perhaps some of their hybrids. Well, this one obviously didn't like staying moist. Yeah, okay, the bark was old, that's partly guilty, but not that bad. I mean, I've had a look at the bark that I've taken out, and it's I've seen a lot worse. I've bought plants in a lot worse, as we all do. But what I'm doing is I'm taking the lower section off, like there's a damaged bit, but the bit above isn't too bad, so we take it off above the damaged bit, have a look, still brown, have a look, now it's green. Yeah, that's all you're looking for. If it's green inside, then chances are it'll branch. If it's still brown, go back a bit further. And they're very capable of branching, so that is good stuff. You can go back to there, and that long bit can come off as well. How are we doing? Green, yep. It's not bad. I prefer not to have any of the old bark left on here. There's a manky one. It's always the way with Phalaenopsis. The worst roots will always be at the base of the rhizome. They're the oldest roots. They're in the centre of the pot mainly, not always. It's not bad. Have I got green? There's an end there, not dealt with. That one, I'm going to leave the end on that one. What are you up to? Oh, you're green. That's good. That will do. As I said, this is just starting to show signs of new roots coming out, so it's going to replace some of these anyway in the very near future. I just want it lower in the pot, and that will now sit low. Yeah, I can't have too narrow a pot because the roots have spread out. Yeah, so I don't want to start snapping them, trying to squash them in a tiny little narrow pot. So that's why I've gone for a larger pot than I want. But how do you turn a large pot into a shallow pot? Heavy crocking. So that's large chunky bark. And now all this is going to get around the roots is medium bark. The roots do need to hydrate nicely, but they still need to dry off afterwards. So that plant will hold itself, which is good. And the fact that this is medium bark and it's dry, it will naturally fall into all the spaces. But being a Phalaenopsis, if there's a couple of air spaces, it really doesn't matter. So it's just a matter of dropping it down, let it fall naturally in all the gaps, and watch it as you go. Yeah? And if you can see that an air gap's forming, because perhaps there's a bigger bit jammed between two roots, give it a poke with your finger and tease it into the gap. Yeah? And try and get the worst of the air gaps gone. And if you don't get all of them, with a Phalaenopsis, don't worry. I don't know whether anyone else has noticed, but there's quite a lot of the Phalaenopsis. If you've got a big air gap in a pot, the roots will head for it. It's as though they think, oh, there's some air and some daylight over there, we'll have some of that. And they'll actually grow into that space, rather than avoid it. So they must like those air spaces. Right, let's get this a little higher. I don't want to get right up to the very base. Just the very edges of the roots I like exposed on Phalaenopsis, not buried. The new roots need somewhere to go, obviously. And that, I think, will do. And I bet that's nicely anchored already without even... Well, we'll give it a clonk, a settling clonk, and then we'll water that in. Yeah, that's nice and firm. So job done. You can keep your old label for now, even though it's yellow. I will do a new label for that because this one is virtually accepted across the board now as Phalaenopsis japonica. So I just as well get the label right now. And then all we've got to do is watch what happens with this. Now why these two leaves have gone like that, I don't know. But that one's going to fall off soon. And then that will be the next oldest one. And the leaves, yeah, see that one's got it as well. It might got a bit cold in the winter, you know, a la funny Vanda, that had the same problem. But the top leaves don't seem to have that massive discoloration. Worst case scenario, that could have been spider mites, but highly unlikely. And it's more likely to be cell damage from the cold, even though this one, it says, can stand a colder temperature than some of the others. That doesn't mean to say it likes it though. Okay, that's that one done. You can have a soak in a minute, or a dribble. There's going to be some root damage there, so with me, with that sort of orchid, I'd rather keep it dry for a while and just let some, you know, the damaged areas callus over before I get them soaking wet. And the plant was thoroughly washed, so those roots are fully hydrated. Right, now what am I going to do with this one? First of all, scissors. Nearly forgot again, didn't I? Especially with that, I've just been cutting rotten roots. You know, if there's any moulds or any funguses or anything, there shouldn't be, it's been sprayed with hydrogen peroxide. But, you know, that's the sort of thing I'm getting at. Do you want to pass any infections on that onto your next clean plant? Don't touch it with your hands, Roger, till you wash them. But, I don't think there's a need to cut any of that off, quite honestly. Possibly just... Nope, that one's firm. I'm going to leave that root system as is. It's not bad. I mean, it's a relatively young plant. I know they don't grow very big. Now, what am I going to do? Am I going to mount that? Am I going to put it in a pot? I think, actually, I'm going to put it in a pot with chunky bark. So, let me go and find a suitable receptacle. Right, I found a nice one of those opaque pots that helps stop the algae forming. Keeps the light out to a degree, not completely, but enough. It's a flat bottom pot, but the plant fits in it very nicely. And this time it's going to get potted so that it's upright and the pot doesn't keep falling over. Now this root here is actually going to sit on the bottom of the pot. It'll have no media underneath it. Now I don't mind that. That fits in there quite nicely. And I've changed my mind, because it's a relatively young plant, I'm just going to use the medium bark, not the large chunky bark. Trouble is, in a small pot, you know, the volume of media is low, and as a consequence with the larger bark it's going to dry so fast, whereas with the medium bark it will stay moist just that little bit longer. It can be the difference between a day, yeah, and all that's doing is being lazy because it saves me watering it so often. I'm trying not to leave any really large noticeable air gaps, but I'm very conscious that this plant leant over sideways and constantly fell over in the pot it was in before, so it's going to stay upright whether it likes it or not. It won't need staking, there's more than enough roots in there to hold that in place. More than enough. How are we doing? Just a little bit more, I think. You nice and upright now. See, this pot, believe it or not, is actually bigger than the last one. Well, where is it? Where's it gone? Where did I put it? Bigger than the last one. You'd have a job to be smaller than that one, wouldn't you? So that's quite an increase in the volume within the pot. But the roots fill the pot, so they must have been incredibly squashed in there, and old media as well in there that never been repotted since I got given it. So that's about as upright as I can get it. Where it was naturally curving over in its previous life, the leaves have naturally, you can see it arches in one direction. These leaves should come out in a more Vanda-like fashion, nice and even, but they've either been drawn to the light or because the plant was over sideways they've hung down a bit. But what I'll do now is I'll deliberately lead that new leaf in that direction by putting it in a place where the light is more directional rather than coming in from all three sides and above. So I'll put that in a place where this leaf will just naturally come out here, and then it'll help balance it a bit. Right, that's good, and that is a relatively new label because I've only just found out what the hell this is. And we'll see how that does. Probably a long way off blooming yet, but they don't get huge. But it is a vandaceous type, often grows on rocks, so it's used to getting roots down in craggy places and getting whatever water it gets when it rains, because if you're going to grow in amongst rocks, you probably don't get a lot of moisture naturally. So we'll see how that one does. So that's 3 off the workload. I added 3 more on this morning and there's still some outstandings, but that's got some out of the way.